Legendary investor Charlie Munger died on November 28th at the age of 99. He served not only as Berkshire Hathaway's vice chairman, but as Warren Buffett's right-hand man for nearly 6 decades. Over the years, Yahoo Finance has had the great opportunity to sit down one-on-one with him to discuss everything from inflation to cryptocurrency. Here's a look back at his expert insight and advice as we commemorate his monumental legacy.
I can't think of a single example in my whole life where keeping it simple has worked against us. We've made mistakes, but they weren't because we kept it simple. I would say that the chief advantage that Berkshire has had in accumulating a good record is that we have avoided the pompous bureaucratic systems. We've tried to give power to very talented people and let them make very quick decisions. I don't consider myself I think my way of thinking will work for anybody, of trying to be very rational and disciplined. So I think that much. But to flit around to various careers and go into the other fellow's professional territory and try and outdo him and do all kinds of things like that, I think will not work for most people. And so I always I'm always being visited by young men who say, I'm practicing law and I don't like it, and I'd rather be a billionaire. How can I do it? And I tell them, well, I'll tell you a story. A young man goes to see Mozart. And he says, Mozart, I want to start composing symphonies. And Mozart said, how old are you? And the guy says, 22. And he says, you're too young to do symphonies. And the guy says, yes, but you were 10 years old when you were composing symphonies. And Mozart says, yes, but I wasn't running around asking other people how to do it. So I think this flitting around business is something not everybody should try. And I think if I tried it again, it might not have worked as well. You know, the economy sometimes booms and sometimes it doesn't. And you have to live your life through both episodes. And our attitude is we just keep swimming, and sometimes the tide is with us and sometimes against. But we keep swimming either way. Well, if you believe that, you believe in the tooth fairy. Because then we don't have to have any more taxes ever. We'll just print money and live happily ever after. It obviously won't work. There comes a point when printing money is counterproductive. I don't think we are at that point, but nobody knew where the point was going to come. And we don't know now. None of these people who are so pompously sure of things, because we all want reassurance, and so they provide it. But nobody really knows how much of this is too much. Well, it's a problem if enough politicians are screaming about it. That makes it a problem. If it weren't for that, this one will go away by itself. It happened by accident. We were in desperate trouble. We were on the eve of a great recession that could have been a Great Depression, and then followed by the rise of people like Adolf Hitler and so on and so on. So we faced a real catastrophe. The only weapon they had with this huge was to print money and spend it. And they did it. Well, of course, and they drove interest rates down to zero, or real interest rates. Well, of course, that lifted asset values for the people who were already rich. Nobody was trying to make the rich richer. It just was an accidental byproduct of a correct governmental decision made on a bipartisan basis. And since it was a weird byproduct that occurred in a weird time, it will go away by itself in due course. I've never owned a share of Amazon. I'm a huge admirer of Bezos. I think he's been sort of like Lee Kuan Yew. He's a leader that's all by himself. He's been just a perfectly amazing human leader. But it's always been too complicated and uncertain for my particular temperament.
It's interesting.
And I find other things to do that'll work fine. Well, I think Warren and I have come to tech like some newborn infant that's dragged there. We've had to come because reality has dragged us there. Apple is one of the strongest companies in the world. I judge the strength of the company based on how much the customers love it. And I've got zillions of friends who they'd almost part with their right arm before they'd part with their iPhone. That's a hugely powerful position to be in. And I think Apple is one of the strong companies and will stay a strong company, and I think it's ungodly well managed. Inflation is a very serious subject. You can argue it's the way democracies die. When democracy dies in Latin America, inflation is a big part of it. So it's a huge danger once you've got a populace that learns it can vote itself money. If you overdo it too much, you ruin your civilization a lot. And so, of course, it's a big, long-range danger. If you look at the Roman Republic, and even after they went to an empire with an absolute ruler, they inflated the currency steadily for hundreds of years, and eventually the whole damn Roman Empire collapsed. So it's the biggest long-range danger we have, probably, apart from nuclear war. Of course, in a modern democracy in the age of Keynes, you're going to get big government reaction. The reaction this time was bigger than it's ever been before in the history of the United States. They just threw money at the problem. And they were probably right to fear what was going to happen and to be quite liberal in throwing money at it, but they probably overdid it a little. If you stop to think about it, it's an ideal currency if you want to commit extortion or kidnapping or have a protection racket or something. Why should a civilized government want an ideal, untraceable technology to come into the payment system run by a bunch of people who want to get rich quick for doing very little for civilization? Of course I hate it. I don't think it's good that our country is going crazy over Bitcoin and its ilk. I think the communist Chinese were wiser than we were. They just banned it. You let a bad genie out of a bottle, God knows what happens. The truth of the matter is our regulatory establishment, when they quit the government, they go out into this heavily promotional capitalism. And so it's very hard to get the government to make good, wise decisions about something like Bitcoin. Of course, it creates tension. And the reason it creates tension is that people they're not really motivated by greed. They're motivated by envy. It's the nature of our species that we look around us at other people and are envious of them if they have more than we do. And that envy has always been a big problem. That's the reason the laws of Moses said you couldn't envy the neighbor's wife, you couldn't envy the neighbor's land, you couldn't even envy your neighbor's donkey, which wasn't much of a farm animal, by the way. And the old Jews were having trouble with envy, and we're still having it. And so, of course, it'll never go away as long as you have human beings.